Do you have two computers?
Just a minute, just a minute.
Yes.
Yeah, perhaps that's the reason.
Yes.
That's a problem.
Yeah, so am I audible?
Very good.
Switch off the other computer.
Yeah, switched off.
Yes. But it's still showing. The screen is
Done.
That's
Yeah.
good.
I'm so sorry for the inconveniences.
No, let's start officially. Let's start
Actually,
officially. To
yeah,
all viewers
absolutely.
on Facebook, and to all viewers on the Zoom platform, apologies for the
The
technical
inconveniences.
inconveniences. So please bear with us, Dr. Satpathy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Tirtha. I welcome you all, the audience on the Facebook and on Zoom, to this first impact talk of Rupkatha. So I'm a representative, an executive representing the impact talk of Rupkatha, and of course, language editor of Rupkatha journals. So it's a pleasure that the Rupkatha Journals has pioneered this impact talk for the first time out here. I'm hosting from the state of Orissa, the eastern part of India, which is a beautiful state, and it's also known as the Temple City with lot of greenery. And I cordially invite all of you to be here for once and enjoy the hospitality and the culture. So it will also be an intercultural meet. So we believe, as Indians, we believe in plurality of language and the plurality of cultures. So it would be a pleasure, and we are all very famous for our cordial hospitality that we render to people. So it's a pleasure and honor for me to introduce myself, that I am a professor from Shiksha Anusandhan University, and my university is also in the Temple City of Bhubaneswar. And so it's a pleasure for my university also to have this impact talks and to be a part of this impact talks. So thank you, Professor Tirthada and Tarun, for this opportunity to us. And may I take the opportunity to introduce Professor Tirtha Mukhopadhyay. He is a chief advisor and editor of digital, and he's a professor of digital art and interdisciplinary humanities at the University of Mexico. And and he's in conversation with Paul MAJKUT, who is a journalist, an activist, a philosopher, and professor at National University San Diego, California. And Dr. MAJKUT is the founder of Democratic Socialist Association of America and is an associate of the US presidential candidate, Bernie Sanders. I extend a warm welcome to Dr. MAJKUT and look forward to learning about his wonderful career and ideology of democratic socialism. So welcome you, sir. And now over to Professor Tirtha. Thank you so much.
Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the Impact Talk series, the first Impact Talk that is being hosted by the Rupkatha Journal. The Rupkatha Journal, as you know, is now a Scopus indexed journal published from India and is ranked 13 in Asia and 64 worldwide. Rupkatha has a huge base of authors, contributors to literature, philosophy, media studies, and various interrelated disciplines in the social sciences and the humanities. So it is a great honor for us really to have Dr. Paul MAJKUT, who was the former professor of National University at San Diego, California. But he has a checkered career in journalism, in the teaching of English literature in Asia, in Latin America, in North America, Europe, and he has been a Fulbright Senior Research Fellow. What is, however, more interesting about Dr. Paul MAJKUT is his involvement with politics, with social issues, and he has been an activist for a long, long time. We have the honor of having someone who graduated in 1964 and who was very much in the middle of the revolutions of the 60s. The 1960s was such an interesting period. And Paul was just coming out of school, and I wonder what he was thinking at that point of time, and how his thoughts have shaped all his future writing, his career. And he's continuing to write. He's a prolific writer, and he's continuing to influence people, to inspire people in different countries and continents. So I'm sure this will turn out to be a very interesting talk, and this will have a considerable impact on the way that we are thinking about the contemporary world. So I would like to begin with, uh, in a chronological way. We will start with Paul's early career and his development as an activist and an author, and then gradually move on to discuss uh, democratic socialism. So he was one of the founder members of the Democratic Socialist Association. Is that right, Paul?
More or less. More or less.
Okay, okay. So let me begin where we should begin. So Paul, you studied literature in English, and you got your major in English from the University of San Diego in 1964. And you did your master's again in English, but you had varied interests in your postgraduate career. Tell us something about your early years as a graduate student and your trajectory of thinking at that period of time.
If you recall for the invitation, I'm very privileged to speak to international scholars and international students of politics, media, and literature. So it's very fine to have an audience who still listens to me. My early career began when I was a teenager, I suppose. In the United States, I grew up in high school in a period of American history that was a second phase of fascist America. It was that era that you may not know American history, but in the 1950s, there was a fascist senator, Joseph McCarthy, who led a frightening campaign, somewhat like Trump, but maybe worse than Trump, with secret police, and that's where my career began. And that was the protest that soon became the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King. And I was associated with King in the American South. And that was quickly followed by the war in Vietnam, which became another great problem for demonstrations. So there was the question of civil rights, there was the question of war, and at that point I moved to Canada because Canada was accepting Americans who were draft resistors. In other words, people who did not want to go into the army. I have no problem with if we need to fight, but I am not willing to fight in a war that is not just. That's not my cup of tea. I can see that sometimes violence is a reaction. I don't support it, but I can see that it happens. So I was in Canada uh, for the first few years of the war uh, in the 60s, the war in Vietnam, opposing the war. Before that, with Martin Luther King in the South. And then after that, in various kinds of struggles. Yes, that shaped me. What I see today in America, but by the way, I don't think this political phenomenon is only American. I don't think that fascism is uniquely American. When I look at the world today, I think of all news today is local news. So you probably see the same television I see about the fire in California. You probably know about the fire in California. I know about floods and cyclones in India. I know about earthquakes. So all news, in a sense, today is local news.
Yes, yes, Paul. You're absolutely right, and we will look at how the global media functions in the contemporary era. The other aspect of the 60s that I want you to comment on is uh, the African American civil rights movement, and more specifically, how were you looking at Martin Luther King? So, what were your perceptions of Martin Luther King? And you have also been involved with uh, the life and the movement and organizing around Martin Luther King. So, tell us something about your experiences with the civil rights movement of the 60s.
Martin Luther King was among the very greatest of American reformers. Martin Luther King was not violent. There was, he was not associated with violent action. He was associated with nonviolent action. The training or the teaching from the Southern Conference, Christian Conference that Martin Luther King led, there was a training for how to have a sit-in. For example, if I wanted to go in Alabama or Mississippi, those are parts of America in what we call the South. Those are very racist states. So we would go into a coffee shop together, but at the time it was apartheid, or in America, apartheid is called segregation. It was against the law to sit next to a black man and a white man and have coffee. So we had a training that if the police came and hit you, you could not fight back. And it was necessary to have a training. In the training, we would have people spit on us and have no reaction. The principle was nonviolence. You could not react. You could not strike back. Later in my life, I didn't agree with that completely.
But
I,
did
I
you
did
did
originally, I agreed with it, and I still agree with it in principle. But principle and reality are sometimes very different.
so did you actually
Excuse me, Professor, can I just intervene for a moment? Can
yes.
Professor Paul just be a little louder? Can he just increase his volume? Actually, it's not audible.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, much better. Thank you so much.
I will speak up. Thank you for telling me.
Thank you so much.
So is there any specific incident from the civil rights movement days that you remember as a citizen visiting the southern states? If you would like to share one specific or incident that might be of interest to us, you believe?
Uh, Many, but one I can remember quickly in Mississippi. I was I was from California, so I was lost. I was driving and I was lost. So I went into a small city, a small town, not a city, a town in Mississippi. I went to the center, and around the center, statues and a little park, there was a black man, an old black man walking. And he was walking, I could see from my automobile, proud. He was standing with his chin up, walking like I walk, like you are. And I was in a hurry. I needed to come, I needed to find my people that were demonstrating in Mississippi, but I was lost. So I pulled my car over quickly and I jumped out of the car to ask him directions. Remember, I'm from California. So I thought I asked directions. And immediately when I approached him, his stature, the way he stood, changed. And he changed into the stature of a slave. He did this. He lowered his head and he was talking to a white man. And I began to understand that this question of what are called racial relations, is a very deep matter. Finally, for me, it is in the United States, it is a question of a slave economy. And this country has a slave economy. By the way, I am not criticizing the United States more than I would criticize India or more than I would criticize Africa. I think this problem is not a national problem. I think this problem is an international problem. And it's all connected to making big money. That's
Yeah,
my
but you you wrote in your brief message to me that you always prefer to think in a dialectical manner about the conflicts, both inner and outer, and you yet retained a belief in humanity. So, how would you define your next phase where, coming out of the civil rights movement, you embarked on a teaching career and you were traveling all over the world? And what kind of political and philosophical experience did you keep gathering as you traveled? And we will come to your visit to China. You have taught in China for 2 years, and then you went on to teach in Saudi Arabia, which is at the other end of the political spectrum. So, would you mind telling us a little more about your experiences in China and in Saudi Arabia?
Yes. When I returned from Canada to the United States,
Mhm.
the war was continuing, and I felt like I needed to contribute to the cause in the United States. So I moved to Berkeley, in California. I returned to California and participated in actions that were being taken in California. Of course, at that time, because I did that, I must say that the number of jobs and work in the university were becoming very difficult to find. And I had a very good job at a university. And don't ask me to explain this, but that was not of first importance to me. I know it is very important, and I am not trying to diminish the people who are looking for a good income for their families and need to have a job. But for some reason, it was important to me, but it wasn't the first importance.
Paul, could you come closer to the computer?
I'm sorry again.
Yes.
I'll try to speak up. So the first importance to me was not the job. I've always had good profession teaching universities. And my philosophy, my idea of teaching was the job will come to me. If you don't want me, well, that's okay. I will work in an auto shop. I will be a baker of bread. I don't think that being a university professor makes me special. So I didn't put the importance on that. And I did put the importance on politics, if we mean politics in a big sense, not in a narrow sense, but in the sense of that all life is political life. So China was a step. Also, I had a very good job in California, but it was in a part of California now at the university that is very conservative. And I am married to a woman who is originally from Chile. And she said, we cannot live here. We cannot live here another year or we will divorce because I hate it. I didn't like it. It was a job, teaching. It was a good job. But she said, we don't need it. I said, well, what do we do? And at that time was when China was opening to the United States. And I received an invitation to teach in China as a foreign expert.
This was the 80s. This was the 80s, right? The
Yeah.
early 80s. So
No.
China was opening up, and you thought of going to China to teach
Yes, and we did.
English.
We went and we taught English, well, philosophy also. They didn't really make a great distinction. They were just happy to have an American foreign expert. And of course, that immediately meant when I returned from China, because China did not pay very much money, I immediately needed to find quick money. So I went to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia was insane. I hope there are no Saudis here. I love the people of Saudi Arabia. I respect the Bedouin greatly. I can tell you many stories. However, the government of Saudi Arabia is, well, I think you know, it's a very tyrannical government. It's a king with absolute power. But it's the only place in the world where you can have 4 full-time jobs at the same time.
Okay. So how did you find the dialectics between the people and the government? And you had been writing for the Riyadh Daily, if I'm not mistaken, and you have been a daily columnist with the Riyadh Daily. So what were you really talking about in those newspaper columns that you were writing in Riyadh in the middle 80s?
Nothing political. The one time that I tried to put in a very indirect comment on politics, it was stopped. So I wrote about daily life. I wrote humorous stories, funny stories, stories about daily life of foreign workers in Saudi Arabia, many of which were, in fact, from Kerala. There were a number of journalists working in Saudi Arabia from India. So no, it was a cultural, comic, daily life, daily
Right.
comma. Nothing political.
Okay.
Unless I wanted to lose my head, I mean, I could do something and probably lose my head, but.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's not the best of options, right?
No, that
So,
was low on my list.
so, uh, so now that you came back to the US and you really started teaching in National University, and this is the time that you have been developing also, I think, your ideology of the democratic socialism. So tell us about the range of socialist ideas, the bed of socialist ideas in the United States and in the world. And what do you think about socialism in general, the kind of socialism that you have been interested in while you were now finally once you were back in the US?
Well, I was a socialist long before I was belonged to the Democratic Socialist Organization. I was a socialist when I was 17. So my time with the Democratic Socialists is short compared to my life in socialism. But very distinctly, there are many kinds of socialists. Remember, even Nazis, Hitler called themselves socialists. And there are many American socialists from 1900 who were racist. The famous writer Jack London, not a very decent guy. We would not consider him a progressive socialist today. We would consider him very reactionary, especially his views on Chinese and his views on Mexico. He was a racist. And many of the early American socialists were racist. The feminist socialists were very much racist. So when they campaigned for the vote and they received the vote, it was not for black women, it was for white women. And very famous American feminist leaders said this, we believe in the vote for white women. So let's be very clear when we use this term socialist, it has many, many meanings. For me, it very specifically means dialectical materialism in the Marxist tradition. So I consider myself a developing out of the Marxist tradition. I'm not a Christian socialist. I'm not definitely not a Nazi. I'm not any kind of social. I'm not a communist socialist. I belong to another tradition in America, which is very close to labor unions. The socialism that's connected to a union of workers.
So you have, did you receive some kind of formal education in the study of labor unions uh, at all?
Of course not. Where would I
Okay.
where would I do that? If I look at a newspaper in the United States, I look at, I don't know, in India or in Mexico or in other parts of the world, but in the United States, the newspaper has different parts. And one part is like comics, funny. One part is news, and another part is finance or business. But there is no labor part of a newspaper. In any paper in America that I know, you do not get uh, labor speaking of it on its own. You do get capital. You have Financial Times in London, and you have Wall Street Journal in America, but you don't have that. You don't have a labor paper. So they're really, how do you educate yourself? Well, it's not very easy. A lot of it is by talking to other actors in conversation. It's not easy to educate yourself on socialism in America because, except today, socialism is now popular with young people in the United States. It's an amazing, to me, it's very amazing. Young people have said, we don't care. We like democratic socialism. We think that medicine should be free for everyone. We think that education should be free for everyone. You may not know it, but an American student,
Paul, could you come up to the microphone again?
again, I'm trying again, sorry, is that better?
Yeah, that's better here.
Okay, I'm trying.
Okay,
Uh,
thank you. I'll keep reminding you, so
yes,
no issue.
no problem. Just remind me.
Yes, but so how would you define democratic socialism? How would you define it in very, very simple, clear-cut terms for the generation, for the present generation?
Isn't that a very difficult question? That is a very difficult question. I don't know if I can answer it. I think we live in a, it depends on what we mean by democracy. So if we mean by democracy, bourgeois democracy, the democracy of the rich, then socialism means one thing. If you mean socialism in a, like North Korea, that has a very different meaning of democracy. So for me, within the structure of capitalism, we have a political party. And the political party will try to win. Sometimes we work with the Democrats, and sometimes we work without the Democrats, but we work within the system. And that's always a problem. Can you work inside a system that is not a good system? Racism, for example, in America is systemic. Look at this.
How do you, how would, how do you, how do you see Bernie Sanders' uh, activism in this context? Don't you think he is making some kind of impact as well? And if it is not also uh, I think it feedbacks into some of the young uh, intellectuals who are going to the university or trying to think in a different way. How would you evaluate Bernie Sanders?
Well, he's very popular, and it is generally it is said that he is the most honest politician in America, and young people like that. They like that he's honest. Some people say he's boring or he's funny because he always says the same thing for 50 years. He says, what does he say? 1% of the population has all the money. That's the problem. And so he always comes back to that point and says, the rich run this country. And that's what we mean by bourgeois democracy. If socialism is a political party, as it is in Europe, as it is in Germany, or I don't know, England, I don't think they have a
Labor Party.
well,
That's
cool. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, the Labour Party in England is about right-wing party that you can find. I know that when Thatcher left office, they asked Thatcher, what is your greatest achievement that in your time as prime minister? And she said, Tony Blair, because Tony Blair gave up everything that Labor stands for. Oh, please. It's like Bill Clinton, President Clinton in the United States. He's really on the right. He's not progressive. So I think that democratic socialism within this kind of democracy is a democracy of the rich. It's the democracy that defends capital and property. So if we want to organize, we have to have a political party. Sometimes we can win. But what is the other way? The only other way I know to have power is violence. And I don't recommend violence. So what choice do we have? We have the choice of working in what we call the grassroots. We have organized people from the bottom up, and that's Bernie Sanders. I know Bernie Sanders because when he was first elected in the 1990s, I don't know if everyone here knows who Bernie Sanders is, but that, that good-looking man on the left, yeah, who is that? You know, there's Bernie Sanders and that other handsome man.
That's you on the right
Oh, oh my God, so it is.
So so it all comes down to saying what we have really been suspecting all along, but which has not yet really been formulated in the way it should be. That uh, that semantic categories, verbal categories, a term like a term like socialism, does not really mean anything unless you address the problem which lies at the root, which is the inequality of man and man. And I guess any kind of government, even a socialist structure, can generate what you call in my conversations in your write-ups, I see you calling it kleptocracy or plutocracy. A government which steals, uh, a government of thieves, uh, and and the mass of the people uh, who has no clue about what is happening on that level.
Let us be very clear. It is not
Yes,
the government. It is not the government that steals. It is the corporation and the bourgeoisie that controls the government. The government are merely a mouth that talks for the rich, for the bourgeoisie. The distinction, and be very clear, the distinction we need to make is economic. It's an economic distinction. And that's the difference between the kind of socialism that I follow, which is a very Marxist. For me, it's all about wealth. It's about the distribution of goods. It's not about race, in fact. I've often said a black man in the United States or a Mexican American in the United States, or now, because there are so many important leaders in the United States from India, they cannot be racist. Why? Because racism is systemic, it is institutional. You can be full of hate. I have known black men and black women who hate whites. And hate is a bad thing, but hate is individual. If it's systemic, it's not individual. For example, when I bought my house some years ago, in the property deed, it said, because this is an old house, it said in the original papers for this house, it said, no blacks, no Mexicans, no Jews. It was in the law. So that means it was systemic. It's in the law. It's part of the system. It's not that the person is bad. In the United States, a person of color does not have power. Therefore, they cannot be racist because racism is systemic, it is institutional. They can do something different, they can have hatred, they can hate people, and that's not good. But does hate give you power? No. Power can only come within the system, I believe.
right.
So since I'm a humanist, I think that when one group is liberated, it cannot be me first, first women, first men, first whites, first blacks. No, 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 no. When we cross the line of liberation, we must all make the same step at the same time. Nobody is second. There is no delay. You know the expression, justice delayed is justice denied. You delay justice, you have denied justice. So you cannot say, me first, and I will take care of the problem of blacks, or I will take care of the problem of whites, or I will take care of the problem of women, or I will take care of the problem of Muslims or Christians. No, 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 no. We need to do them all at the same time. So the struggle, the fight that we have is really one of organizing. How do we put together people of all kinds to make the same step at the same time? what is the opposite? The opposite is Trump. Trump divides, divide, divide. But our power is in union. Our power is being together. His power is in dividing us. But if we were a union, and I believe unions are the way to go. So I know that in the United States, many professors like me, I was full-time, so I made good money, really big money, no problem. But the teachers, they have many teachers here who are part-time. Those part-time teachers are exploited horribly. They're paid much less. And of course, in the United States, they don't have health care. So they have to pay, they have less money, but they need to pay for their health insurance. I didn't have that problem because I was full-time. But the universities have become corporations. So I see that as the problem. As you said, plutocracy or kleptocracy. But the thief is not the politician. The thief is the capitalist. Because the capitalist in this country plays the politician. The politician is a puppet. He's not, they're not leaders. Leaders are very rich people. Very, very rich people. I don't mean rich, I mean extremely rich. I think for us, it's very difficult to understand what 1 billion US dollars mean. I don't think we have the imagination. We don't have the experience. Therefore,
it's a failure of the imagination.
I can't imagine. Sometimes I don't know in your countries where you are, do you have lottery tickets? You buy a lottery?
Yes.
Yeah. And poor people in the United States buy lottery ticket. I buy a lottery ticket. And it's like my grandmother bought lottery tickets. Not because she wanted to be rich, because she wanted to give money to her children and her grandchildren. That was her dream. I will give them something because I was poor, and I will give them something. But she never won. But I will win. And I know I will win because I asked the man who sells the ticket, and he said, well, you won't win. And I said, well, what do you mean I won't win? And he said, well, you can win 1 in a million. Only 1 in a million people win. So you're not going to win. And I said, 1 in a million, that means I can win. So I look at people who don't have money, look at it differently. They look at 1 in a million as the only opportunity they have. So lottery tickets are very famous in California. Who buys them? Rich people? No, no, no. Who buys lottery tickets? The people on the bottom, because it's a dream. And I identify with that dream. So be careful, because when I'm a billionaire, you might need me, not because I have $1 billion.
Yeah, we will be in touch. Don't worry. And that brings us to another question. I mean, a series of strong hammerings that we have been listening to in the last half an hour. I think the climax comes when you say, Paul, that the most dangerous class is the petty bourgeois, the Marxian petty bourgeois. And would you say that the middle class somehow belongs or not belong to the petty bourgeois today?
That's very difficult, because in a Marxist idea, there are only 2 classes. There's the class that has, and there's the class that does not have. There's the class that works, and there's the class that does not work. There are the rich and the poor. There are only 2. But in bourgeois sociology and economics, there are 3 classes. There's a lower class and an upper class, and there's a middle class. But I don't know what the middle class is. What is the middle class? Is it a number? Can you tell me when am I in the middle and when am I low? Or when am I upper? Middle class for me is a fiction. Middle class people, or what you call petty bourgeois, is a good term. Petty bourgeois is like lawyers, some doctors. They work and they work very hard. Sometimes people have a family shop and they have a little grocery. They sell some food, or maybe they have a little restaurant. There's a family. And of course, they work very hard. And they think, if I work hard, I will have 2 restaurants, or I will have 3 restaurants. I will have 5 restaurants, and I will be very rich. Well, that's not true. So the petty bourgeois are really workers. They work harder than I do, because if you have a restaurant, you work 20 hours a day, and your wife works, and your children work. You work really hard. So these middle class or petty bourgeois are really workers, but mentally they identify, I will be Rockefeller, I will be Bill Gates, I will be a billionaire in the future. They have a dream. And it's good to have a dream, but it's not a true dream, because the chance that you will become a billionaire, Tritha, well,
Mhm.
it's possible. It's
Well,
possible, but
mhm.
I don't think so.
No, neither do I. So, and how would you say, I personally think, Paul, that one of the greatest dangers that is being posed to human societies in the contemporary world is the danger of the media, because the media is constantly reifying these values of the petty bourgeois. You have to get rich, you have to wear that brand of shirt, you have to look like that particular individual on the screen, you have to live like, uh, in a house which costs, I don't know, $2 million. So this is a very entrenched systemic phenomenon in the media, and yet the media is flourishing. And there is the social media, which might have tried to combat this tendency of the petty bourgeois, but yet it doesn't work. I mean, there's some kind of, if you think of Marx's thesis on Feuerbach, so is it not ingrained in human nature? I mean, how do you explain the role of the media?
I have no idea what it is. I have no idea what that is. If you mean animal, that we're animals, well, then I understand it, because we are a social animal. That I understand. But if nature means something like, oh, like the Christian idea of a soul, there's something inside me that's eternal. Well, I don't know. I don't follow that. But I think that if you think about the media uh, as making us, the media actually makes us who we are, then we have to not, we don't want to use the word social media, because social media is antisocial. Facebook does not bring people together. Facebook used to say, I will be friend. How many friends do you have? Okay, I don't think we're using the word friend in the same way that Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook says. When he says friend, it's not what I mean by friend. Or when they say uh, Microsoft Windows, it's called Windows, right? I think we're on
Okay.
Windows now. You were using Windows. But don't we need to look again? This is not a window. A window is something that I can see through. I am not seeing through now. I am seeing a flat surface. It represents you in some distant place, but it's a flat screen. I am not seeing through. So media, uh, this media is antisocial. It does not bring people together. That is a term, by the way, it's not my term. That is a term from a woman at Harvard, her name is Sherry Turkle. She writes a lot about the psychology of the internet. And she says, don't say social media, say antisocial, because it breaks. You can see that if you teach online. If you teach online, and maybe at this meeting, there are people who are listening to me and also on their phone with another person. But I will tell you that at this minute, right now, I am with you 100%. But you see, this is it. There is not more, there's not less, 100%. If someone is doing this and looking, they are not 100%. So the relationship is not honest. This is not an honest relationship. This is a dishonest relationship because people are saying that they're having a complete relationship, but they're not. They're with two people. So what does this medium do? This medium that we are in right now is a prophylactic. If we use prophylactics for sex, well, this is a prophylactic. It is a shell that is covering our relationship. We can try to work through it. We try our best to communicate. And I'm glad we have technology. It's good to have. But we must know the limitations. Because when I said earlier that all news is local, that means that you, if you are in Argentina or Africa or India or Japan or the United States at this minute, the problem we are having in California is your problem. And your problem is our problem. We're not, I believe, we will not fix these problems if we go individual. We never fix it. Why? I'll give you examples. Corporations, big corporations in the United States, if we do something in the United States and we become hard on them, they will go to China or they will go to India. Look in teaching. And I give you an example of university teachers in my experience. 20 years ago, we were beginning to use internet teaching. 25 years ago, we were doing the first, it wasn't Zoom, but it was online teaching. And he said, well, the teacher said, well, that's okay, but we don't have to worry. We have a full-time job. What did I say? I said, in the future, we can find my university teachers in Calcutta who have American university degrees, better publications, more intelligent, work harder, and you can pay them much less. What will the university do? Well, of course, they'll go to where they can find it. What will the people in Calcutta do? They will be happy to have it because it'll be more than they have in India. So what have we done? We have divided the working class because I know the teachers are special, but for me, teachers are workers. Very simple. We're workers, we get paid. If we don't pay for our electricity, we don't have electricity. So we are workers, and it's very important to us. If we divide, we cannot win. There is no future for us. And in education today, I don't know if you see this in other countries, but in education today, the model, the template, the model that is being used is the corporation. So universities are thinking like corporations. Their head, the way they see the world when they see flowers, if I'm walking on the street with this businessman in the university, I see flowers and I say, oh, wonderful, let me smell them. He says, oh no, let's cut them and we can sell them. We're not seeing the same thing. We see two different things. It's the same thing, but we don't see the same thing. And that's so important because everyone loses. This is a way to keep going down. But the problem is that the people who will take these positions in Argentina, in India, in China, very qualified, really good people, they need to live also. So what are we saying? That American workers are more important? Everything is international now. The internet is international. Facebook is not American. Facebook is international. We must begin to think in an international way. We cannot think in a national way. That's fine. I know, do you know the philosopher, maybe Frantz Fanon? He's from Algeria, a very famous writer.
Of course,
Of course you know him.
the
And
wretched of the
yeah,
earth.
the wretched of the earth. And he spoke the truth. And the truth is that there are in Africa what he called white mask, black face. Black face, but to put a white mask on it. That's a danger in the what used to be called the third world. It's not third, but that was the name that was given to it. I don't know how many worlds I can keep going. Like 3, maybe 4, maybe 5. But that's another problem that we have. So we say when I step across the line to liberation, freedom, you will walk with me. You will step together.
Well, Paul, we can go on talking for hours, and uh, the best part of it is that you keep coming to the shores of humanity. And, despite everything that might be there in our past. And that is the message of hope. So we will hold on to that message for now, and we will conclude this wonderful, wonderful talk, this illuminating talk, this call really for looking at human societies in a truly post-Marxian way. And that is the value of your message today. I can't thank you enough for coming to the Rupkata platform and talking to us about these things. I would now hand over to Dr. Satpathy to conclude the session, but also to invite us and invite you as well, Paul, to launch the proceedings of the first international open access conference organized by Rupkata. And this is also a moment of opportunity, a moment of academic expression, intellectual expression for all those writers, authors, academicians who have contributed to these proceedings. The proceedings is being partially published today because of all kinds of difficulties in the COVID situation. I know people in the publishing industry who have been cycling, riding on a bicycle for 50 kilometers to come to work and to go back another 50 kilometers to their home in the evening. But it is in this context that we would also like to say that the entire proceedings will be published within a few days, but we have already the contents and some of the articles are there on the Rupkota Journal Proceedings webpage. Thank you, everyone. I hand over to Dr. Satpathy for the launch of a brief session for the launch of the proceedings, and then we will conclude this very interesting first Rupkota Impact Talks. Dr. Satpathy.
Thank you so much, Professor Tirtha Prasad. It was indeed a very grueling session and, of course, mesmerizing talk, a conversation between you and Professor Paul. So it's a great opportunity and, of course, an honor for us to be a part of this session. As Professor Tirtha Prasad has already said, that we had a conference of Rupkatha Journal of Interdisciplinary Studies in Humanities in the month of August, 21st to 23rd of August, which was in collaboration with IIT Patna and Shiksha Anusandhan University. And so today it's an honor and pleasure for us that we are going to launch the conference proceedings. So may I take the opportunity to invite Professor Paul and Professor Tirtha Prasad to take over the session of the launch of the proceedings. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Satpathy. Paul wouldn't know much about the proceedings, so I would just ask the administrators to demonstrate the page, the first page, the cover page or the editorial page of the proceedings. So this is the Rupkota Journal on Interdisciplinary Studies in Humanities. And the initial page of the proceedings. Can we scroll down a little bit, please? Okay, so we have the editorial, we have the keynote address, the valedictory speech article. The section one is, the first section is devoted to, can we go down a little bit? Akushak, just a little bit. To look at some of the articles. Yes, the keynote address by Dr. Albert Klassen. And I think the first section is on arts, globalization, and marketing, which is so interesting. It's so interesting to look at the arts from the perspective of globalization and marketing. Interesting combinations and interrelations. So basically, you could just click onto the Rupkota Journal homepage, and click and go to the proceedings page. Yes, art, globalization, and market economy. The first article, The Way of the Firang, illustrating European social life and customs in Mughal miniatures. So that gives us an example of the range of interests and the interdisciplinary studies and research that has been brought into the first international conference. As the chief editor and organizer of the conference, I would like to thank every contributor, and I only hope that Rupkota will be able to continue this good work of bringing online publication opportunities to young aspiring academicians with a nonprofit motive for a long, long time. I appreciate the contributions of Shiksha or Anushandhan University, Orissa, and IIT Patna, the Indian Institute of Technology, Patna, and Dr. Priyanka Tripathi, who represented IIT and who is not be able to be with us here today. Of course, Dr. Satpathy has been anchoring this entire program. Before I conclude, I must say that we have been delayed and we didn't really have an opportunity to ask questions. But with this launch of, with the launching ceremony of the proceedings, and before we leave on a very happy note, it might be, Dr. Satpathy, if you allow, just one or two questions from an international audience. We have 47 participants.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Satpathy.
Yes, we can.
If anybody is interested in asking a question to Paul, Dr. Satpathy, would you mind going ahead and asking the question, selecting and asking Paul?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Q&A sessions, if I can view up to. Akarshak, can you just, okay. Actually, I'm not able to access it with the host. So
Okay.
The questions, so, okay.
Dr. Tawhida, I think this is a question from Dr. Tawhida. Dr. Tawhida, would you like to introduce yourself and the country you are representing today? Dr. Tawhida.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, everyone. Did you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes.
Actually, I am Indian also. I am from Kashmir, Indian Kashmir, but presently I am working in Saudi Arabia. So it was an opportunity for me to be the part of this international conference. It was really an amazing platform. Throughout, participants from all over the world contributed. So I find opportunity and pleasure to be the part of this conference. I am very blessed, and I hope these conferences in future too, that will give us a chance during these situations, like when we are psychologically, mentally disturbed. But this conference give us a positive attitude, and all the things like everything worked smoothly, like the conference, then the certificates, and today the launch of the this journal. It was really a good moment. I appreciate all of you.
Thank you. Would you have a question?
No,
Okay.
sir, not at all. Not at all.
Okay. Do you see any other question, Dr. Satpathy? Joe?
Actually, I'm afraid I'm not the host.
Okay.
So I think the host, either it is Pragati or Akarshak,
Okay.
who can just take the questions.
I see that talking has been permitted to Joe Philip. Would Mr. Joe Philip, Professor Joe Philip, would you like to contribute something to this discussion? So no, I think we are fine. Then thank you everyone for attending this wonderful presentation by Dr. Paul MAJKUT. Fulbright Senior Specialist, former professor of National University, San Diego. And he's also the president, founder of the Society for Phenomenology and Media, a very interesting platform for scholars all over the world. And it would be a very rewarding experience for anyone out there to join this organization that Paul founded way back 20 years back. And we will keep in touch. Please write to us about Impact Talks. Please tell us uh, whom you would like to hear in the future. We can bring Paul back again for another talk after a couple of months. Yes, Paul, your concluding words.
I put my email address in the chat
Mhm.
at the bottom of the screen. Everyone
Okay.
does chat, and if you look under chat, you will see that I gave my email address,
Okay.
and you can copy it there. And please feel free to ask me the questions in an email. I can also do Zoom. I know there are always problems with technology first time, so it's literally not a problem. It's to be expected. So I put my email, and if anyone wants to contact me, please feel free to do that.
Excellent. Please write to Paul for anything, especially for his organization and the academic work on media studies. And with that note of the happy launch of the proceedings and the first very successful impact talks of the Rupkota Journal, I conclude the session and hand over to Dr. Satpathy for the final one-line Thanksgiving note, and we would call off the Zoom meeting.
Yes, thank you, Professor. So it's customary that we need to have an ending, but of course, I cannot end the session without congratulating you and Tarun, of course, Tarun Tapas Mukherjee, who is the editor of Rupkatha Journals. And this is the, the brainchild of you people, the Impact Talks. And of course, we have just contributed a little to it. And so I think all of us must have benefited, and it must have been a learning curve for all the researchers to listen to such a, an activist and so many multifaceted personality. So thank you once again for making me a part. And about the conference, I must say that was such a huge platform that I think it gave, a new beginning for all the researchers who tried their luck, and of course at the same time they researched on various areas. So that was also a fantastic job that was done. And of course, I take this opportunity that we feel the absence of Dr. Priyanka Tripathi, who was a very active member, and she also would have been here. I think she's indisposed for today. So in any case, so thank you. I also formally thank her for her contributions to the conference. And now I take this opportunity to thank Professor Paul for being here with us. And we look forward for many such sessions where we can also listen to him on various other areas. And of course, taking on to the technical difficulties that we faced. So I think we were not able to listen to him very well, which could be driven out in the next sessions, though. And I thank Professor Tirthada, and I mean popularly known as Tirthada. So each time when I'm saying him Professor Tirtha Prasad, I'm finding it very difficult to pronounce as Professor Tirtha Prasad. Because I take him as a family, and so I do not know it. I'm fumbling when I say Professor Tirtha Prasad. And of course, I'll fail if I don't say the man behind the scenes, the editor of the Rupkatha Journals, that is Tarun Tapas Mukherjee, who has always been taking so much of pains, whether it is in the proceedings of the conference, whether it is at the organizing the conference. So, but he's never to be seen, but always pressurized with too much of work, and his contributions are actually, I lack my vocabulary to say that how much of contributions he has made. And
Yeah,
of course,
he's the
like
living
we have
mammoth.
other members.
He's the
Yes,
living
and
mammoth.
the other board, yes, and the board members of Rupkatha Journal. So heartfelt gratitude to them. And of course, we have some young aspiring people with us, that is Pragati and Thakur Das, and of course Akashak, who is the technical manager, a young budding engineer. And so thank you so much, each and everyone who are there. And I also apologize for any kind of, technical issues that we had. So these glitches are very much normal, and we have to live with it as we have to live with Corona. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.